Hello, and welcome back to another Eduonics tutorial. In this section, we're going over effects and techniques in Photoshop. And in this video, we'll be combining several different techniques to make a harsh-looking grunge effect. There are not many things manlier than shaving your face, especially if you're doing it with a huge steak knife. But still, you have to admit that this image looks kind of soft. His skin almost looks too smooth. There are no imperfections, no flaws. It looks pretty good, but it just doesn't seem to fit the context of the photo. One thing that we can do to make this image more manly is a grunge effect. What's a grunge effect? Well, much like the haze effect we went over earlier, you can sometimes find it as a preset filter to apply to your photos. It's generally a combination of dark tones, gritty details, and most of all, it should be harsh on the eyes. I'm going to be applying all of these components in my own grunge effect. First, I'm going to duplicate my background layer by clicking and dragging it down to the new layer icon. I'm going to sharpen this layer, so I'll double-click its name and type sharpen. Then, to actually apply the sharpness, I'll go up to Filter, Sharpen, then I'm going to skip past all the options that say sharpen, and I'm actually going to click the one called Unsharp Mask. Contrary to what might be your first guess, Unsharp Mask actually does sharpen your image. Now that the Unsharp Mask dialog is open, I'm going to grab this amount slider and bring it all the way up to 500%. This seems to be sharpening up some details in his face, but it's not quite affecting as much of the image as I want it to. This is where the radius comes into play. See, the idea is to maximize the amount of texture in the skin. So I'm going to play with the radius till I get enough detail without going overboard. As I slide it to the right, it's sharpening all the edges. But if I go too far, these unpleasant halos start to show up. Not only do they look bad, they also seem to be blurring the details I wanted to sharpen in the first place. I'm going to bring the radius down to around 5 pixels. That seems to be a good medium where the details are most evident without deteriorating the tones with those halos. Now, threshold is just here to let me reduce my effect if I want to. I'm happy with my effect as is, so I'll leave threshold at 0. Then I'll go up and click OK to apply it. You know, that sharpness worked so well, I think it might be a bit too sharp. I'm going to blend this new sharpness layer with my original background layer. With my sharpness layer still selected, I'll go up to Blend Modes and switch this from Normal to Overlay. Now it's not only been blended with my original layer, it's also providing some of that dark toned contrast I wanted. Admittedly though, the shadows have gotten so dark that you can't even tell his hair from the background. And the highlights are too bright as well. I'm going to fix this by adding a new Curves adjustment layer. I'll go down to the bottom of the Layers panel, click the New Adjustment Layer button, then I'll click Curves. Now since my sharpness layer is being blended with my original background layer, I just want this curves layer to affect my background layer. I'll just click it and drag it between the sharpness and background layers. Since adjustment layers only affect the layers below them, this will make sure that the curves layer will only affect the original background layer. Now I'm going to go up in the histogram and grab the bottom left point of the diagonal line. Then I'll drag it up 1/4 of the way across the histogram. This is brightening the shadows of my background layer. Now I'll move on to those highlights. I'll go up and click the point on the top right of the diagonal line and drag it downwards a quarter of the way. This is darkening the highlights of the image. Now the midtones could use a little work, so I'm going to click between my 2 points and drag upward and to the left a little bit. This is brightening up the midtones a little bit, creating a curve between the shadows and the highlights, hence the name curves. So far, this is a good adjustment, but the background is still looking too dark, especially in this area at the top of his head. It's still so dark that it's blending in with the background. My goal with the grunge effect is to intensify the details and textures, so I need to make sure that he's completely distinguished from the background. So what I'm going to do now is mask him from the background. This will also give us some more practice with the quick selection tool and the refine edge dialog. I'll go up and select my sharpness layer. Then I'll go over and get my quick selection tool. Now I'll just start selecting him, dragging my quick selection tool wherever I want to be selected. Making sure to avoid the background. But if I do happen to go outside what I want to select, remember, I can just press and hold the Alt key and drag to deselect those areas. Okay, this selection is about as good as it's going to get with the quick selection tool. I'm going to finish this off by going up to the tool options, and I'll click the Refine Edge button. Okay, so this has brought up the Refine Edge dialog. I'm going to start using these sliders to see if I can't get some better quality out of my selection's edges. I'm going to bring up the radius to about 6. This is just inviting a bit more detail into my edges, allowing the software to more loosely sample my selection here. Still, it's looking a bit jagged, so I'll go down to this smooth slider and I'll bring that up around to 40. This is just taking those sharp protruding edges and kind of sanding them down a little. Then I'll set the feather around 3. This is just softening things up a bit before I rein the selection back in to a more solid line. I'll go ahead now and bump that contrast up around 40. And this is really doing a great job of pulling things into a more refined selection. Now I just have a bit of black outline remaining from the background. You can especially see it on the outside edges of his skin, near his shoulders. I'll go down to Shift Edge and slide it to the left till I get around -20. Okay, that should do it for my refined edge. Now I'll just go to Output and switch that from Selection to Layer Mask, because I want to use this instantly as a layer mask on my sharpness layer. Then I'll just click OK. Now we've completely isolated him from the background in this layer, but we can sort of still see the background because I haven't applied this to my original background layer. That's actually okay. I think I like it like this. The real thing that's bothering me though is that in succeeding in making this background brighter, I think I actually made it a bit too bright. I think I'm going to tone down the opacity of my new mask. To do that, I'm just going to select my layer mask thumbnail on my layer. Then, up here in my properties panel, I have these 2 sliders to choose from. I'm going to go ahead and pull this density down from 100% about halfway, down to 50%. There we go. Now the background isn't too dark or too bright. It's just right. Okay, my grunge effect is almost done. It's just missing a little something. Grunge effects usually have a bit of desaturation to them. The colors should be muted just slightly. So I'm going to go down to the bottom of the Layers panel and click the New Adjustment Layer button. Then I'll go up and pick Black and White. So this has made a new black and white layer, but it's desaturated my image entirely. I don't think I want to take it that far. So I'll just try applying it to my sharpness layer only. To do that, I'll just press and hold the Alt key on my keyboard, then I'll click between my two layers, and they will be linked together. Now the black and white layer is affecting only my sharpness layer. It's a little more saturated, but I think I'll blend this a little bit better. By making sure that my black and white layer is selected, then I'll go up to Blend Modes and switch it from Normal to Soft Light. Then, to blend it even more, I'll go over to Opacity and bring it down to 50%. There we go. That is just about perfect. Let's see how it looks compared to my original. I'll press and hold my Alt key, then click the eye icon next to my original background layer. This will solo that layer, making it so that I can see only that layer out of all the others. Wow, huge difference. There's so much more texture and grunge with all the other layers. It makes my original layer look so soft. And using curves and masks, I was able to bring more details into this without harming the other areas of the image. Very cool. You know what? This actually looks like it could be an action movie poster. I want to try adding a title to the bottom just to see what it looks like. First, I'll go over to the Tools panel and get my Type tool. Then I'll just click in the canvas to create my type layer. Now I'll type shave in all capital letters. Then I'll go up and click the check mark to commit my type. This text is so small though, I can't even see what it says. I want to make this bigger. I'm going to press Ctrl T on my keyboard to enable free transform. Then I'll just press and hold Shift as I'm dragging to constrain this to the same height and width ratio it was made with. I'm going to pay attention to this box here on the right, and I'm going to stop this transform once I see its width is about 11 inches. Then I'll go up and click the check mark to commit this free transform. Now this font is alright, but it's not quite the movie font I was hoping for. I'll go up in the tool options to the font box, then I'll change the font to Arial Bold. There we go. That's nice and thick, like an action movie font might be. I just want to change its color. I'll go up in the tool options and select the color thumbnail. Then I'll choose a nice dark red. Not too bright, not too dark, just right where it looks serious, but not over the top. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this text by pressing and holding the Alt key, then I'll drag this text below itself. This will simultaneously duplicate this text and create a new line of text to work with. I just want to change what this text says. I'm going to go ahead and double click the T icon in the Layers panel to highlight my new line of text. Now in this line, I'm going to type hard in all capital letters. Then I'll go up and click the check mark to commit my type. I want the hard text to be big enough to match the shaved text though. So once again, I'm going to hit Control T on my keyboard to go into Free Transform. Then I'll just resize this and sort of move it around as I go to make it line up with the top text. Then, once I'm happy with it, I'll hit Enter on my keyboard to commit the free transform. The lines of text look good. They're nice and matched up, but I'd like them to be vertically apart from each other by about 30 pixels. So I'll just press and hold my Shift key, then hit my arrow key on the keyboard 3 times. This will space them out exactly 30 pixels apart. Okay, I'll just make sure that these are nicely centered on the canvas. Then I'll proceed with adding a drop shadow to them. I'll make sure that Shave is above Hard in the Layers panel. Then, with Shave selected, I'll go down to the bottom of the Layers panel and click the Layer Effects button. Then I'll select Drop Shadow. Now that my Layer Style dialog is open, I'm going to drag this opacity up to 100% because I want a very bold shadow. Then I'll uncheck Use Global Light. And I'll go ahead and set the angle to 90 degrees. Now I'll bring the size to 0 pixels. And finally, I'll adjust the distance slider till it's just about touching the bottom text. I find it's pretty good at around 29 pixels. Okay, this drop shadow is good. I'll just go up and click OK to apply it. I'll just copy this drop shadow to the bottom text by pressing and holding the Alt key, then dragging the drop shadow layer effect to my bottom text in the Layers panel. Alright, I've got my drop shadow on both lines of my text. Now, as a final touch, I want to make this text sort of lean to the right, almost like an italic font. The only issue with using an actual italic font is that it won't line up with the text the way I want it to. So I'm going to manually lean or skew this text. First, I'll press and hold my Shift key, then I'll select both my text layers. Then I'll right-click one and click Convert to Smart Object. Now to skew these, I'll go up to Edit, Transform, Skew. This has placed my text in sort of a free transform box, but this box operates a little bit differently. I'll just press and hold my Alt key, then I'll drag the top line to the right a bit, and I'll keep dragging it to the right till I get to about a 9-degree skew. Then I'll hit Enter to commit this transform. There we go. We're done. Now my image has that 90s action movie look. Let's take a look back at my original. I'm going to press and hold the Alt key, then click the eye icon in my background to isolate it. Wow. We've gone from a manly yet soft image to a hard, gritty movie poster with grunge effect. That will do it for the grunge effect. I'll go over another effect and technique in the next video.